The Phoenix Suns trotted out a big three of future Hall of Famer Kevin Durant, superstar Devin Booker, and perennial All-Star Bradley Beal for the 2024-25 season. On paper, this team should have waltzed through the regular season and, at the very least, made some noise in the playoffs. Well, neither happened. They finished with a disappointing 36-46 record, but forget making the playoffs, they weren't even seeded high enough to make the play-in tournament. It was no doubt a colossal failure for the team. But you're thinking, hey, it was just a rough season. Beal and Durant missed time with injuries, the bench was near the bottom third in the league, and Booker still played at an all-star level. Surely they'll be back next year with a vengeance. Well, here's the thing. There's no guarantee that they'll improve, and that's besides the fact that Durant and Beal are only getting older. The team is boxed in financially. The Suns aren't just dealing with a disappointing season. They're staring down a worst-case scenario. A roster locked with aging stars, no cap flexibility, and little hope for internal improvement. It's the kind of situation that doesn't just derail a season, it can derail a franchise for years. Now you're thinking, oh, just trade Beal then. He's a pretty one-dimensional player on the wrong side of 30, and his $53 million in salary would clear up the cap space for the team to sign quality role players to assist their two superstars. Yeah, good luck with that. Beal has a no-trade clause in his contract, meaning he can veto any trade and essentially dictate where he wants to play. So you have to pivot to the next alternative, trading Booker, trading KD, or both. Trading Booker would have been a widely unpopular trade amongst the fans and locker room, and trading both would have started riots outside of Phoenix Arena. So what happened? Phoenix had no choice but to trade Durant and his $54 million in salary to the Houston Rockets last month. While still a top 15 player in the league at worst, Durant will be 37 years old in September, and the Suns lack young talent. From a business perspective, the logical thing would have been to trade both Durant and Booker in order to receive the maximum optimal value. But again, it's easier said than done, and Booker has stated on record that he wants to be on the Suns for his whole career, recently signing an extension that keeps him in Phoenix through the 27-28 season. Nevertheless, the trade of Durant signified a soft reset on the franchise in hopes of turning things around while Booker is still in his prime. You have probably heard of the NBA salary cap. It's a soft limit on the amount of money that a team can spend on players in a given season. I emphasize the term soft limit because it truly is just that. Most teams use significantly more than this limit, as all 30 NBA teams were over the cap for the 24-25 season. Teams do this because there really are no penalties for exceeding this. The NBA just slaps these teams on the wrist and tells them to stay below the limit. Additionally, the cap is expected to increase by 10% for the next season. However, just like in baseball, there's a luxury tax threshold. This is where teams start paying financial penalties. I'll leave this chart up here for a few seconds. Depending on how much a team exceeds the luxury tax threshold, they are placed in a certain bracket, and every dollar spent above the limit is subject to a respective percentage to be paid. However, there are higher percentages placed if a team is a repeat taxpayer. This chart just shows teams in their first year above the tax line. The next level is when teams start to be sanctioned on what they can do with their roster. This is called the first apron. The limit for the 24-25 season was set to just around $178 million. Here, some penalties are enforced if a team is above this limit. Among these are no sign-in trades, using more than the taxpayer mid-level exception, no use of the biannual exception, and using more than 100% in salary matching in trades. We'll go over these terms in a little bit, but the main points here is that there are deterrents for teams to exceed this threshold. But there's a harsher level, one that the Suns find themselves above, the dreaded second apron. The penalties include all of the previously mentioned, plus even greater ones. As you can see, this isn't a slap on the wrist at all. It's strongly discouraged nowadays for the teams to get to this level, as it can cripple a franchise for years. I'll leave some of the business jargon described in the penalties up here for a bit, so feel free to pause the video if you'd like. And here's when things start to get really interesting. The Suns aren't alone. What's happening in Phoenix is part of a much bigger story unfolding across the NBA. The league's new second apron rules, the most aggressive salary cap restrictions the league has frankly ever seen, are starting to squeeze top-heavy contenders. Teams like the Celtics, Timberwolves, and Suns are learning the hard way that spending big doesn't just cost money anymore. It costs flexibility, depth, and maybe even a chance at winning. But why exactly did the NBA implement these new policies? If you were to ask many inside the league office, they would tell you that it's to promote parity around the league. This in order to avoid just a select few teams from accumulating all the best talent around the NBA. You might know these as super teams, but to many outside the NBA league office, they implemented this for one main reason: to kill the dynasty. A dynasty refers to a team that achieves sustained success and dominance over a period of time, often winning multiple championships or titles. And the NBA is no stranger to dynasties, with the most recent being the Golden State Warriors of the late 2010s and early 2020s. The most iconic dynasties in its history include the early 2000s LA Lakers, the mid-2000s San Antonio Spurs, and the 1990 Chicago Bulls. In many of these cases, the teams ranked in the top 5 in league payroll, and the stigma became that you need to buy championships. Just in the past 15 years, the most successful teams were paying heavy prices, even though some of them won the chip while others didn't. As you can see, the second apron wasn't random. It's a response to years of dominant big spending teams stacking all-stars. The Warriors, Nets, Heat, teams with deep pockets who could absorb tax penalties and still build super teams. The league's goal is to level the playing field, make it harder to buy championships, and easier for smart front offices, regardless of market size, to compete. In theory, it promotes parity, and yes, the last few seasons have seen a lot more unpredictability, as there hasn't been a repeat champion since the Warriors in 2018. The Nuggets, Bucks, and Raptors weren't traditional powerhouses, but they won titles with strong development and smart cap management. This year's champion, the Oklahoma City Thunder, is a prime example of a small market that made smart basketball decisions to construct their stacked roster. But actually, let's look deeper into the Thunder. While they won the championship despite only being 26 in the league remarkably in payroll, the notion that they can sustain this long winning with so many young players on favorable team contracts is honestly very naive. So heading into next season, the team only has 2 players on the books who will make over $20 million, those being MVP Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at $38.3 million and veteran center Isaiah Hartenstein at $28.5 million. The rest of their key contributors will only be earning between $5 and $18.5 million. But after this season, things truly start to get tricky, especially when it comes to their next 2 best players. I'll be using the term max extension quite a bit here. Basically, think of it this way. If a player earns All-NBA honors, wins the league MVP, or Defensive Player of the Year, they become eligible for more money, like a lot more money. All-NBA forward Jalen Williams is eligible for a 5-year, $240 million rookie max extension this offseason, and outstanding center Chet Holmgren is also eligible for a similar extension. Additionally, SGA just signed a 4-year, $285 million Supermax extension, which kicks in during the 27-28 season. Let's do a simple breakdown for the team's expected payroll for that season. SGA at $63.7 million, Jalen Williams at $49.2 million, and Holmgren at around the same. The other key players under contract, 6-man Alex Caruso at $20.9 million, Isaiah Joe with a team option at $11 million, and 3-point specialist Aaron Wiggins at $8.6 million. But here's the thing. In the preceding offseason, Lou Dort and Isaiah Hartenstein will be free agents, and Cason Wallace, who's an outstanding young defender, will be in the last year of his rookie deal. It's unlikely that the Thunder will let any of these players walk in free agency. Dort and Wallace are both younger than 30 and bring immense value to the team for their defense and timely shot making. Assuming that the Thunder keep them, their respective salaries will be in the ballpark of $25 to $30 million. Considering all this, the Thunder would be well over the second apron. At this point, the penalties would truly hamstring the team. So, to stay underneath this apron and to avoid the harsh penalties, they would need to let 2 out of the 3 walk, assuming that they aren't traded before then. And even this would barely put them underneath the projected first apron for that season. They're not in a big market, but to the NBA, that doesn't matter. The rule applies to everyone, not just teams like the Celtics, Lakers, or Warriors. As a matter of fact, we've already seen something similar to this already. Take the Boston Celtics. Heading into this season, the Celtics were positioned to be repeat offenders of the second apron. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were both on Supermax extensions. Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis were inked to long-term expensive deals. Borderline All-Star Derek White is making nearly $30 million. And while Jason Tatum rupturing his Achilles will keep him out for most of, if not all of next season, the Celtics were faced with the worst-case scenario financially. Without Tatum, it's unlikely Boston will make much noise in the playoffs, and with how harsh the second apron penalties are, it makes little sense to be above this threshold if the team is not projected to be a true contender for the title. So the team had to make the difficult decision to dump the salaries of both Holiday and Porzingis in trades with the Trailblazers and the Hawks. The Timberwolves did something similar before the start of last season. The team was already 3rd in the league in payroll, but after superstar Anthony Edwards' rookie max extension kicked in, the team was well over the second apron. So they needed to cut ties with star center Karl Anthony Towns by trading him to the New York Knicks, and even that didn't solve their glaring issue. Heading into this season, they'll have over $150 million just tied up to Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, and Naz Reid. That's 5 players, and it will be hard for the Wolves to sign and acquire any true depth, as they need to avoid being repeat offenders after already crossing the second apron threshold last season. What makes this system so harsh is how early it kills flexibility. Let's say your stars are young, your window is open, but your payroll is ballooning. The apron essentially tells you to stop. You can't trade 2 role players to get a better one. You can't offer a decent free agent the mid-level exception. You can't use bird rights, that's a topic for another day, to keep valuable bench players. It hurts the teams that draft well and develop stars. So should a team really be punished for succeeding? The way I see it is this way. There are pros and cons to it. It's great for competitive balance. It's great for small market teams who used to be priced out of contention, and it's forced front offices to be smarter, more strategic, and more cautious. But it also limits creativity, punishes teams for success, and makes it harder to keep great rosters together. It's asking teams to win, but not to get too good. It's a little bit contradicting, but if it means that one team isn't on top of the league forever for the sake of parity, then so be it. Although there's a legit argument to be made that having dynasties attracts more eyeballs to the sport, as fans want to see the king be knocked from his throne. It's no longer just about drafting well or making the right trade. Now it's about having the perfect balance between talent, timing, and money, or risk falling off a cliff. Because in this new NBA economy, ambition has a price, and the second apron makes sure everyone pays it. Thank you so much for watching the video. Leave a comment down below on what you think of this whole situation. Do you think it's good for the NBA? Do you think it's bad? The previous video on service time manipulation in MLB did really well, so I want to thank you guys for the support on that. I'll leave it up here so that way you can go see it if you haven't already. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you soon.